Well, I really appreciate this invitation. Can you hear me all right? On the back row, you hear me okay? I appreciate this invitation, and I want you to know that I am glad to be here. Now, this is a pretty young crowd. You know, there are a lot of kids in here. Do you notice that? For us older folks, we may remember a great baseball player, and when I say his name, some of you are not going to know who I'm talking about. But he was a great baseball player, one of the greatest of all times. But even more than that, he was a wonderful philosopher. And his name, Satchel Paige. You never heard of him. Can you believe it? These young people don't even know about folks like Satchel Paige. Well, Satchel Paige not only was a great baseball player, but I appreciate some of the wise things he said. And one of the things he said as he got older is something that I am very pleased to say myself. And that is, at my age, I'm glad to be anywhere. So I'm glad to be here with you tonight. And, I recognize that I'm an old man now, because usually when I go into a room, I find I'm the oldest guy in the room. Now, you don't know how that affects people, I'm sure, until you've actually been there. But I can tell you that it does make me sit back and take notice of a lot of things. But there's one thing that I have had a hard time adjusting to. And that is when I really learn that I'm an old man. And I'd like to ask you, do you know how I know that I am a really old man? Young women are opening the doors for me. Now, I want to tell you, that is a convincing thing when that happens to you. But you know, there are values in age. And one of the values I bring to this room tonight is that I have had experiences, valuable experiences, that I can share with you. And that's what I want to do. I want to share some valuable experiences with you so you don't have to learn the hard way some of the things that I did. Now, in order to do that, I'm going to tell stories. You know why? I know you're not going to remember much of what I say tonight. And he's not either. But if I tell you a story, that will help you remember the main points that I'm trying to make. So tonight, I'm going to tell you stories, and I want you to know all the stories I tell are true. Some are a little more true than others, but occasionally I have to change names to protect people's privacy and that sort of thing. But these are all true stories. When I wrote the book, Creative Followership, I wrote it with this thought in mind. I want to be able to communicate with people of every age. I want to be able to communicate with people from the age of 14 to 104. And so I've used stories in my book to tell what I did and what happened to me so that you can see how you might apply those to yourself and make your own story. Your life is your story. You're writing that story today. And I urge you to think in those terms as we go through this tonight and as you think about where you're going and what your life is going to be. Now, I've written the book, Creative Followership. Here, we have copies to sell tonight. If you'd like to buy these, they're $20 a piece. That's a bargain price in case you didn't know. And I'll be glad to sign those for you and personalize them. When I wrote the book, my primary audience I had in mind was young people like you folks right here. But you know, you are not easy to reach. You're really not. And you don't buy many books anymore. And so I'm wondering, how am I going to get to you? And I found that the best way that I can reach you is somewhat indirectly. In other words, I am able to reach you indirectly through business executives, through educators, and through your grandparents. Now, I want to tell you, I love to speak to senior citizens. You know why I like to speak to senior citizens? They buy my books by the handful to send their grandchildren. So if your grandparents send you a book, you be sure and read it because they got a real purpose there in sending you that book. I'll give you a little story here. Back last spring, I had a lady invite me to Blairsville, Georgia, to her church to speak to senior citizens. And I love to speak to seniors. I went out and spoke to them. This was in the spring. Along about the end of July, she called me on the phone and she said, Jimmy, I want to tell you about one of the ladies that bought your book. She said she had a granddaughter who graduated from college in May. And the granddaughter was able to get her dream job. Do y'all have a dream job in mind? The perfect job that you'd really like to have? Well, this granddaughter had been able to get that dream job. And she was calling her grandmother to report on how it was going. And she said, Granny, I hate my job. I don't like my boss. I don't like these people I'm having to work with. I don't like this job, Granny. I am miserable. I hate my job. What do you think about that? Her grandmother said, I've got a book I'm going to send you. You read this book, and then you call me and tell me what you think. So she sent her my book. 3 weeks later, she called her grandmother back, and she said, Granny, I'm only halfway through this book, but the stuff in here really does work. She said, you know, my boss is not all that bad. And I'm kind of liking these employees I'm working with here. She said, Granny, this is going to work out to be a good job. I'm liking it. What was different? Attitude and approach. And folks, that is the way that creative followership is aimed. It's aimed so that you can take advantage of the workplace when you get there. You know, I've been in a lot of situations where young people arrived on the job after they graduated, and they have a beautiful diploma on the bedroom wall, but not a clue in their mind about how to satisfy customers, please a boss, or even how to get along with their coworkers. Unless you've actually had part-time jobs, or maybe even full-time jobs, or internships, you don't get exposed to a lot of that. But I understand at this school, internships and part-time jobs are encouraged. You are very fortunate to be in that kind of environment, because I want to tell you, it's going to give you a decided advantage when you get in the workplace. Now, let's get started on creative followership. I want to give you the best career advice ever. Did you get that? The best career advice ever. Now, let me ask you. Let me see if I can find somebody that looks real smart over here on this side. How about you, sir? You look like you're pretty well put together there. If you were going to seek career advice, where would you go to get it?
Somebody in a profession that I aspire to go in.
Yeah? How about you? What kind of person would you want to give you that advice?
Experience.
Experience? How about you?
The same, probably a lot of experience.
A lot of experience. Yeah. How about wise? You think wisdom might help? Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to share with you tonight the best career advice ever from the wisest man that ever lived, King Solomon. And here it is. He who tends the fig tree will eat its fruit, and he who cares for his master will be honored. Does that make sense? Seems pretty simple, doesn't it? That's the best career advice ever? Let me tell you why it is. Let's look at this. He who tends the fig tree. How do you tend a fig tree? How would you tend a fig tree? Yeah, I'm talking to you. Watering it. What else? Yeah? Y'all help her a little bit. She's doing very well, but she could always use some help.
Making sure that as the plant grows, you give it room to grow, move it from a smaller pot to a bigger pot, or
Yeah. Prune it, fertilize it, water it, take care of it like that, trim it. Yeah, that's the way you do. And what's the result when you do that? He who tends the fig tree will eat its fruit. You get figs. That makes sense, doesn't it? But is there a farmer in the room? Not a one. Not a farmer in the room. But I want to tell you, this works. And I'm going to demonstrate it for you in just a minute. And he who cares for his, let's say, there are a lot of women in here too. She who cares for her master. Now, let me ask, what's another word that would be more popular today than master? Somebody helped you back there. Boss. Okay. She who cares for her boss. How do you care for a boss? Tell me, sir, how do you care for a boss?
Showing up on time to work,
Yeah,
doing everything you're supposed to.
exactly. You help a boss, and that's caring for the boss. Okay. What happens if you care for the boss?
Get a raise, maybe.
Yeah. Hey, this guy's in sync with me. I'm highly motivated by financial returns. Are you?
Yeah.
Good. She who cares for her boss will be honored. How does the boss honor you? Think about it. How does the boss honor you? What do you think? What? Promotions, yeah. Raises, you get paid more, you get promotions.
He'll seek your advice on things.
Yeah. Let you give input. Give you good performance reviews.